because this video is not like sponsored or anything else of that sort. Yeah, so the work environment is very, in corporate terminology, it's very dynamic, basically. And what I mean by that is you are expected to be at the top of a game more or less all the time, right? So we can slack off for maybe a week or 2 weeks or something of that sort, on and off, maybe like 2 good months and then 1 or 2 bad weeks or something of that sort. That doesn't matter. But otherwise, they expect high performers. When they say we hire top 1% of the talent in the world, they actually mean that quite literally, because if you have someone in your close circle who has worked in crossover, or in your friend circle or something else of that sort, or have spoken to someone who's worked there, like in a deeper conversation, not like over YouTube where you're watching the video, and I mean, not that kind of thing. Someone you actually had a conversation or a proper deep meeting with, then they would tell you that the people in their teams are also very highly effective or efficient people, basically. So you're not going to go in there and have the sort of distribution that you usually see in companies. It's going to be all people really at the top of the game, more or less. So there's that, and you have to clock 40 hours. That's basically tracked. So for those of you who have done freelancing in any field, mainly on the Upwork platform, because that's the one that I have freelanced on, I think 5-6 years ago. So over there, they have these hourly contracts, right, on Upwork. So for those of you who have done those hourly contracts, it basically more or less is like that. So you turn on the clock basically, and that's it. Then you're working, and you have to do 40 hours in a week. That's the upper limit, and more or less also the lower limit as well. From a personal experience perspective, I can't go too deep into that because not sure how much is okay to be shared basically, but it's fine basically if you're doing like 30 hours 1 week out of a month or something like that. No one really bats an eye for that. But if you're consecutively, for example, doing 20 hours, 25 hours, 30 hours for like a month or 3 months consecutively, or every month down the lane you spend 2 weeks where you're just doing 20 hours, then of course that can get problematic. So there's that. And then the other thing is that you only get paid for the hours that you work for. So for example, if you clock in 38 hours, that's a good number of hours, by the way. Let's skip that. Yeah, so if you do 38, for example, you're not going to be paid for the 2 hours on top of that, more or less. So it's essentially, and by the way, the contracts are not timed. So it's not like you have a 1 year contract with crossover, or a 3 months contract, or a 2 years contract, nothing of that sort. You either quit or you are let go, and that's pretty much it. So it's like a job from that perspective, but at the same time, it's not really a job from the perspective that you do not get any benefits, basically. So that's another question. And Crossover, by the way, is very transparent about that. If you would just go to their website and look at their FAQs, they've answered all of these questions. I actually personally like that about them, that they're just very open about what kind of people that they basically want, right? And where was I? FAQs. Yeah, you can go to the FAQs, and what can you look at over there? The hours. Yeah, and you don't get paid for the hours that you don't do. So it's like, yeah, if you are doing 100K job, that translates to about actually 104K. That translates to $50 per hour. So for example, if you do 38 hours, then in that case, you missed out on 2 hours. That's $100. So you're going to get $100 less in your weekly salary, basically. And the payouts, by the way, are weekly. So you get them on Payoneer. You have to basically set up an account if you don't already have one in the actually before the joining date. So once you get the offer and before you join, in that period, you're supposed to set up your Payoneer account, and then you get weekly payouts in that. When you join the first 2 weeks, you don't get any payments, by the way. So there's like always a 2 weeks rolling window, let's say. And then after those 2 weeks, the third week, you get the payment for the very first week that you worked. And then it keeps going like that until the time that you exit, basically. So yeah, and then let's say, for example, 1 year down the lane, you quit the job, right? Then in that scenario, what would happen is that the final week that you work, you're going to get a balloon payment. Basically, there's one that you get for exit. I can't mention how much that is. And then besides that, there's also the payment which basically closes that gap, that 2 weeks gap, that rolling window, basically. So the final payment that you get, it's going to be for the 2 weeks back, 1 week back, and the current week, the last week that you have with crossover. It's going to be bundled into a single payment, and then you get that. And then besides that, there's like an exit bonus, or I don't know what to call it, an exit payment that you basically get. So that's more or less it from the payment perspective. And the payments are automated, by the way. So it's not like, it never basically gets delayed. If I recall correctly, I think it was Wednesday every morning. It just worked like clockwork, basically. You'd get it more or less at the same time every week. So where was I? Okay, so the payment part is done. And then the work environment part, I mentioned that as well. So for me personally, I actually liked the working environment. I like to be productive. Let's just put it that way, because especially if you're not married or don't have kids or stuff like that. Because I want to maximize the number of hours that I am working on upskilling myself or spending in professional pursuits. Let's just put it that way. So from that perspective, it was very rewarding for me. But again, like I said, that's more of a perspective thing. Another person who might look at this, they might just decide, okay, this is not suitable for me. And the other part is that you also have to, one thing that people are generally concerned about is the monitoring aspect. So that varies from business unit to business unit, the level of monitoring that's basically being done. My particular scenario was not really a big problem, frankly speaking, but again, I can't go deeper into that part either. So let's just leave that part there. And what else was there? Work environment, we talked about that. Is there micromanagement or not? So that's another question that I think a few people have asked. I mean, quite frankly speaking, 90% of the questions are actually about the CCAT exam. And then the other 10% is about the interviews. No one really asks much about the real work assessment. I don't think people really face problems in that. CCAT and the interviews really where people mostly have seen struggle with. And then there's like a very small percentage which clears the CCAT and the real work assessments, but they just don't get called for an interview, which makes sense, frankly speaking, because I'll just give you one example. I've applied for an SVP of marketing role, right? And I have zero marketing experience, zero professional or corporate marketing experience, basically. But I had cleared the CCAT, of course. I had cleared the language proficiency, the GenAI test, all those. Actually, GenAI at that time when I was applying, which was about 3 years ago and then 4 years ago, it wasn't there. This is something that I've introduced about 6 to 8 months ago, maybe 9 months. But yeah, those tests were already cleared. And then the exams that they had, the real work assessments for that particular role, I cleared those as well. But of course, when the hiring manager was going to review my CV or my resume, they were going to instantly basically saw, actually. It's not exactly an assumption. That's more like a fact. When they saw my CV or my resume, they probably saw like this guy has 1 year of experience, and that's in being a co-founder at a startup, which was pretty good. But at the same time, that was not marketing related. I was on the tech side of things, basically, mainly. So he instantly, of course, would have sniffed it out and then decided not to interview me. So that's where my application closed. So that's expected. And you can expect that in crossover as well. So if you don't have a really good CV or something else of that sort, or like maybe in the real work assessments, you maybe had like passable marks, but not really like the highest percentile, then they might not call you for an interview if they have a pool of a big enough pool where the people they have a good CV as well as they've got really good percentiles on the real work assessment. So that's more of a comparison sort of a thing. Um, yeah, so that's more or less it. And the other part that from the negative perspective from crossover that I got questions about is the reviews basically. So there were like actually three people who shared some articles and they were actually very close. So I actually read those articles and then provided them a very deep, lengthy perspective on that, which was very transparent because they were my friends or like people who were really close to me. Majority of the articles that are out there, I would say, at least the ones that were sent to me, because I've never really went on a side quest to search for reviews of that sort, frankly speaking, not even when I was applying myself. Most of those articles are like back from 2016, 2018, 2019. And since I was in the ecosystem for quite a long time, about 4 years, there were people that I've spoken to within Crossover who actually have been a part of Crossover for like a very long time, 10 years, 12 years, 6 years, stuff like that. Not 12 years, but I think up to 8, I've seen people like that, spoken to them and all of that. So I know how the company sort of evolved, and I think at one point they were maybe trying to expand the recruitment aspect for other companies as well. And by that I mean, like I said that in the very beginning, that this is more like a recruitment and payroll management unit within a bigger company basically. But at that time they were trying to do the same thing for other companies as well, and I think they were not really able to crack that very well, or there were like troubles and all those different things, all sorts of things. And there were a lot of processes which they ultimately got rid of as well. So anything before 2020, I would say just completely discard. I think it was 2019 or 2020 when there was like some sort of a major shift that happened in their processes and these kind of things. So those very old reviews, they don't really matter. But the ones that you see on Glassdoor, some of them are valid. Do look at them. But there are many which are simply they're not very useful. Let's just put it that way. Don't want to say any negative words for that, because at the end of the day, it's just a matter of perspective. So yeah, just to give you an example, if a person interviews for crossover or maybe takes like the first 2 tests in their process, they can then just go to Glassdoor and drop a review over there, even if they've not worked there. I think it works that way, if I'm not wrong, because I've seen a lot of reviews in the past where people who never worked for crossover, they just drop their reviews, and the number of applications that crossover gets is like very huge, because majority of the companies across the globe, like if it's like a US based company, they're going to very likely hire people only from US. If it's I don't know, a Singapore based company, they're likely going to hire only from Singapore, with the exception of a few people that they hire internationally, for example, where they're not able to find the talent in their own country. But besides that, they're basically hiring locally. So they don't get like a huge pool or something else of that sort. But crossover actually gets applications across the globe because they're like fully remote. And I mean, you can verify that by the number of people that they have following them on their LinkedIn. I think it's maybe a few 100,000 or maybe in the millions, if something along those lines basically. That should give you an idea of the number of applications that they basically get. And out of that, I would say maybe only 1, 2, 3%, probably a lot lesser than that actually, because They have maybe 1,000 to 10,000 employees max, I think, not more than that. And the applications they get are like way more than that. So everyone else that does not get in, of course, are not going to feel good about it, and that person is going to leave a bad review for them. The percentage just gets higher. So those are not really useful, but there are useful reviews in that as well, positive as well as negative ones. I mean, it's like just like every other company, it's not like a bed of roses or something else of that sort. There's good things and there's bad things, and the people who have actually worked there. Let's cut this short. What I'm trying to say is, if you want to look deeper in terms of reviews, check out the reviews which are from the last 2 years. And the second filter you should apply is only check the reviews from the people who have actually worked there, not the ones who maybe took the CCAT exam, found out they're too dumb to clear that, and then they developed an opinion that CCAT is a very bad measure for job applications or something else of that sort, and they decided, okay, I'm going to leave a bad review in Glassdoor. Perfectly fine for them. I mean, if they believe that, that's good. I personally am like 50-50. It is from some perspectives, from some it's really not. But yeah, not really a good feedback for you, basically. Nothing valuable for you in that. If you've decided that, crossover is a good fit for you in terms of the pay that you're able to get and the work environment seems suitable for you, because there are like many states in many continents where the work environment, even in the local companies, is like extremely toxic. I can say that for my country at the very least. Right. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the holidays part. So this is something that I covered early on in the video as well, which was you only get paid for the hours that you work for, but at the same time, and you are basically required to do 40 hours. By 40 hours, I mean like something along those lines. Let's just be close to that, basically. You don't have to do exactly 40, but that's up to you. But yeah, the other part is out of office days. So I don't know the policy for all the business units because I haven't worked in all the business units within Crossover. And by business units, I usually mean companies, not like function, sales, marketing, and these kind of things. I mean companies. Like there was Aurea, there's GFI, there's Trilogy, Alpha School, or so on and so forth. So that's what I mean by a business unit, basically. So each can have their own policies, and which depend on the executive body, more or less. In Trilogy, at the time that I worked over there, they had this policy where they would float a Google form, basically, at the end of every month, where you can basically log your out of office days. And if it's less than 10 working days that you're going to be away for, you just mention those dates. They could be consecutive, they could be spaced out throughout the month. No one is going to ask you any questions. Your manager would not ask you anything. No one is going to ask you anything at all. If it's 10 or more, then you need your manager's approval, basically, for that. And yeah, in my case, I was basically more or less taking 3 to 4 off days every month, and then every 3 or 4 months, whenever I wanted to do a trip or something else of that sort, then I'd just take 2 consecutive weeks off, and no one ever had any problem with that. Yeah, the 3 to 4 off days, that was basically sort of offset the 40-hour requirement. I personally don't want or feel the need to work the 40 hours, or at least did not feel the need to at that time. So I didn't. And when you take a day off, so I would just take 1 day off every week. Like some week I just take the Friday, mark the Friday as out of office, and then for the next one, the Monday that comes after that, so I'd have like a long weekend or something like that. And 1 week I just take Wednesday off, so it's like 2 days off the weekend, 2 days you work, and then 2 days off again, and then 2 days you work, and then 2 days off again. So yeah, was pretty comfortable from that perspective. And In terms of shift timing, that again depends on the role. At Trilogy, for me, it was there were 3 shifts which were available, uh, and you could pick any of them, which basically suits your time zone, and then you just work between that time. At the next one, there was no shift, so I could just more or less work at any time. But of course, that was a sales role. So, for example, if I've booked a meeting with one of our distribution partners or our reseller partners or anyone else for that matter, then yeah, of course, I'd have to be present for that meeting because I usually was the one who gave the time for that. So, if I've said that 4 p.m. in the afternoon on next Wednesday, for example, of course, I have to be available at that time. But besides that, you just have to complete your work, whatever you're working on, and that's pretty much it. No specific hours that you have to work within. So it was very flexible. But again, I would say that the whole shifts thing, that depends on the business unit, that depends on the people that you're working with, the rest of your team basically, and the culture and all of those different things. They would come down very heavily on the person that is managing you basically. More or less like every other company, if you've got a toxic manager, they're going to make your life hell. If you've got a good manager, then you're more or less going to love working in that company. So there's that. And have I missed anything? I think I noted some things down, which so I don't forget. Work environment, I think we covered that. How to get in, apply. Then macros in terms of who's applying. Okay, so who is applying through Crossover? It's people from all over the world, I would say, because when I was working in Trilogy, there were people from pretty much every single continent. People from America, there were people from Europe, there were people from Southeast Asia, people from Asia in general. I haven't seen any Australians in Crossover ever, but besides that, I think more or less every continent I've seen people working in the business units that hire through Crossover. Same was the case for GFI as well. I Yeah, in that case, I think like maybe 50% of the people were from the European side. Yeah, roughly. So there's like people applying from all across the globe. And if I had to sort of segment them, I would say it's people who prefer the freedom to be able to work from anywhere, because all the business units that hire through Crossover, they are inherently remote first, which means like then there's no plans to even shift towards like a hybrid mode or a work from office or something else of that sort. It's always remote, so people who want that flexibility, it's good for them. And at the same time, it comes down to, I would say, personal preferences. So for example, if you are someone who is so senior that you can, let's talk about an SVP of marketing, for example. So if you can land a role as the SVP of marketing in America for $400,000 in your state, the state that you're living in, then in that case, sure, go with whatever company is offering you that and just work over there. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is the cognitive aptitude test. So if you've been watching this video throughout, then you would know that you have to take it twice. Once at the very beginning of the application after you clear the basic fit test. A questionnaire, I wouldn't even call it a test. It's more of a questionnaire, just like 3 to 5 questions or something of that sort. And yeah, right after that, you have to take the CCAT exam. And then once again, you have to do it at the very end, which is once you have the offer in hand and you've given them your joining date. So a few days before your joining date, you can mark it in the calendar when you want to take that. You can decide the time and the day and the whole thing. But at that time, you will be watched through your camera. And at the same time, you have to share your screen while you take the test. I think it went to screensaver again. Anyways, so Yeah, and in terms of material that you can use for preparation, I've written an article for that. I'll just drop a link to that in the description. But generally, the advice that I give is that just try to schedule it at a time. Like if you're taking it for the first time, then you can just take it at any time. You don't have to schedule that. In that scenario, just do it at a time of the day when you feel that you are fully awake. Like, for example, the moment you wake up for the next 2 hours, you're likely not at the top of your game or something. The same might be the case for the last 2 hours of your day before you go to bed. So you have to decide what's the time when you feel that your brain is actually the most active, because you need to be very fast with it. And one general advice that I give is that don't aim to get all the questions right, aim to guess all the questions, aim to answer all the questions, because if you attempt 50 questions in the 12 or 15 minute time range, I think it's 15 minutes, yeah, 15 minutes, then even if you get like 5 or 10 wrong, that's not a problem. 40 is a very good score. 40 means you're eligible for all the roles basically. And if you're focusing on getting all the questions right and you spend like 2 or 2.5 minutes on a single question, which is a complex one, that just makes it hard to attempt all the questions. So don't go down that lane, basically, more or less. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you would have any questions, basically just drop it in the comment section. If I can give like a short answer to that, I'll just answer it in the comments. Otherwise, if it requires like a more detailed review or answer, I'll just make another video and drop the link to that, because the whole purpose of making this is that I get these queries even now on LinkedIn, even though it's been like 4 months since the exit. And the article that I wrote about, I think 2.5 years ago, to sort of curb some of those queries, which is when someone asks that question, I'll just drop a link to that article and tell them that, you can just read that. That seems to not suffice. So yeah, that's why I decided, okay, let's just make the video. And if someone comes to LinkedIn, I'll just drop a link to the video. And at the same time, if there's like more questions which are still pending or, get asked, then I'll just answer them maybe in a video. So in the future, I don't have to type as much, which is the ultimate goal of life. So yeah, that's it. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye.